As the Reaver drained the forge of its vital energy, the tempest receded. I recovered myself and paused to admire my newly forged weapon, now imbued with the elemental power of air. Thus armed, I hope that I now finally possess the means to escape this wasted land.
I like how Raziel is able to admire what is essentially a parasitic creature that is bound to him. Welcome back to Soul Reaver 2. So now Raziel is armed with the Air Reaver, and this section, which involves getting out of the Air Forge, also doubles as a tutorial on how to use the puzzle-solving capabilities of the Air Reaver. This was, as you can see, the first one, turning on these things, these contraptions in the floor that release a stream of air that Raziel can use to gain a higher ground. I really freaking hate them because it's extremely frustrating, it's extremely difficult often to find the appropriate position to properly place Raziel's model in order to be able to get that leverage. And this is the other function. As you can see, this does nothing but
This elemental Reaver I discovered had the power to obliterate barriers that were cracked or compromised. At last, I had the means to open that ruined time-streaming chamber I discovered so long ago in the swamp. Now, perhaps, I could leave this wasteland and return to an era when Janos Ordrin still lived.
Well, I think it is debatable whether it should be necessary to have to use the Reaver projectile to collapse these barriers. But hey, all the other Reavers have a specific puzzle use for the projectiles. The Dark Reaver blinds the sentry eyes, the Light Reaver lights up the crystals, and this is what the Air Reaver does. And once we get to the swamp, we are also going to see what is the final function of the Air Reaver which is not really a puzzle-solving feature, and it's quite unique specifically to the Air Reaver because no other elemental enhancement for the Wraithblade has an equivalent of that. But it's a very, very nice anti-frustration feature, and we will see that when we get there. Now what I did here is I showed off the way the charged up Air Reaver looks. And this is because I really like how this Air Reaver looks when it's charged up. The reason for that is that white is one of my favorite colors, alongside black and blue. So I really like this thick blue Wraithblade coming out of Raziel's hand. And by the way, yes, my absolute favorite Wraithblade design is the Air Reaver in Defiance. I believe I've mentioned that somewhere in the thread, in one of the threads. Was for Soul Reaver or was it here in Soul Reaver 2 beforehand? I'm not sure, I don't remember. And this is bullshit. This is just bullshit. And now you're going to witness me trying for about a minute to get up there. Because this is how the game is supposed to be played if Raziel cannot grab onto that ledge, if Raziel cannot make that jump. And I blame controls here. I blame the space button. I do not blame myself, no. I am good at video games. If I were bad, I would not have been able to kill the fire demons without dying. Well, there's a reason why I prefer claws to the Wraithblade. And this is the reason why I prefer to stay away from the weapons that are lying on the ground, because Raziel will at one point inevitably pick them up and completely screw me over, and I do not like that. I do not enjoy that. Here, even though it's not going to be a massive skirmish, I will, after all, show off the principle of abusing the AI by leaving, by gaining the higher ground. I did not get a possibility to show that off in an earlier place where there was a crap ton of demon hunters, but this shows the principle, the way it works. There was something else I want to say, but... another thing is that you will sometimes, not often, but sometimes the demon hunters will actually win. It's not set in stone that the demons are better than the demon hunters. No, the demon hunters are very capable of defeating the demons, especially when there are more of them. Because the demon hunters, their attacks are quite fast. And there's that. And since they are AI enemies, they are not Raziel, their heavy attacks actually go through the block. Because Raziel's heavy attack does not go through the block, but there's a reason why there's no point in trying to block again anything that enemies throw at you. It's because their heavy attack will go through the block. Well, it also goes through the blocks of the other AI enemies, and this makes for some quite amusing effects occasionally. This part is quite reminiscent of both the original Soul Reaver and of the First Blood Omen, and thus I have decided to let it in. I mean, to keep it in. After all, these two games also had weird hitboxes on levers that did not register either Kain's approach, I think you should say, or Raziel's action half the time. Here I have the opportunity to save my game, but I decide not to do that because there is no point. The next save point is in the swamp and it's nearby, and we will be hitting that in this very video. And I think I should ramble a little bit about the save system, because after some thinking, after some reflection, for a total of 5 seconds right now, I have come to a conclusion that it's actually even worse than the system in the first Soul Reaver. Here, the checkpoints are located in a very inconvenient way, because sometimes you'll have checkpoints like 15 minutes apart from each other, like we'll have here, one here in Ushtenheim and the other in the swamp. But sometimes you will have the checkpoints maybe an hour of gameplay away from each other, especially considering that the cutscenes often take the bulk of the time. And it's quite frustrating, and it actually was quite frustrating for me to record, for me to play through this on camera, because I was not recording from checkpoint to checkpoint, as you have noticed. I was basically recording 1, 2, sometimes 3 parts in advance, and I was essentially cutting off where it made sense in terms of the storyline, or in terms of game progression, but not in terms of where the checkpoint is. So sometimes it resulted in me replaying certain sections of the game multiple times, simply because I did not care. This flawless transition is masking my brain fart. I forgot completely where to go. So I went into the spectral realm, as you can see, and as a result I will not be showing off the final function of the Air Reaver until I regain it in one of the elemental fonts in the swamp. Yeah, at this point I just no longer can be bothered. In the next act of the game I will have my fair share of combat. So I might as well just avoid as much of it as possible right now. Said I as I was killing these demon hunters without any need for it. And this is what the Air Reaver does. And as I said, there is no real use for that. It's something that only happens in the swamp. But it is an amazing, amazing anti-frustration feature. Because now Raziel is moving at his normal speed in this, is it bayou? What's the word? And this swamp water, okay. Fuck it. And I'm pretty sure that we are about to hit our objective. I think. I may be wrong. There was like a whole 2 days between me recording this and me commentating. I think this is it. Yes, this is it. And this is the part I do not like. You saw me struggle a little bit in the air forge in this thing. And here... yeah. It's quite difficult to properly align Raziel's model with this thing. Because Raziel does not float up normally. Raziel always floats a bit forward. And at this point there was a lot of Russian swearing involved. I did not enjoy this. Do you have any idea where you are? Or where I was? Because I know I didn't. But I knew I was high enough to finally make the jump. And now Raziel is about to enter the time streaming chamber, and I wonder where will it lead him? Or rather, when will it lead him?
I had no choice but to act purely on blind faith. There was no way to tell what error this device was tuned to, and I had neither the knowledge nor the means to set the machine myself. I hesitated only briefly. Then, throwing the switch, I hurled myself into oblivion and relinquished my will to the hand of fate.
I have stated in the thread, but really one of the mistakes that Raziel is making, well, Raziel is making a lot of mistakes. He's not being an idiot, he's not being stupid, but he's making many very poor decisions. One of them is not asking Kain to set the goddamn time machine, which is, by the way, apparently one use only, because this, I know what is it, this dial, I'm not sure, this thing that Raziel used turned on. Apparently it's one time.
Beyond all hope and against all probability, it seemed that the device had unerringly delivered me to the era I sought. For these were Sarafan banners, and these vampires apparently the victims of their crusade. The coincidence seemed too convenient to naively ascribe to fate. But whether my opportune arrival had been orchestrated by Mobius or some other influence, I didn't know. If Janos Ordrin still lived, I would find him. But I was wary of further deception and resolved to tread carefully.
Well, at least Raziel knows better than to think that it's not conveniently coincidental. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time. Goodbye.